what can the parents do and the community do to support the schools?
I mean, I just think staying engaged, man. You know, the checking in on your kids. If it's an online portal, checking the grades. You know, attending certain events, being a part of the PTA is always a great way to stay connected. You know, the research is pretty clear. And you know, an involved parent means a better outcome student, a student who does better.
This is the Publisher's Desk with Damon K. Jones, brought to you by Black Westchester Magazine.
Peace and blessings, everybody. This is Damon K. Jones here, and welcome to another edition of the Publisher's Desk, powered by Black Westchester Magazine and blackwestchester.com. You know, it's the news with the Black point of view. And this show, we're going to talk about education.
No peace. No funding. No peace. No funding. No peace. No funding. No peace.
Students, the school system that we're in, we are the futures that you're investing in. Yonkers students are doing the work. Teachers are doing the work. We're showing up. Help us secure the stable funding needed to sustain our progress in Yonkers and ensure that every student has the tools to graduate and succeed.
Before you today on this $1 million staircase, at the heart of the New York State Capitol, we see democracy at its finest, every voice being heard. So why is Yonkers silenced for so long?
Our students and teachers show up every single day, ready to succeed. But to be honest, it feels like we're trying to run a race with no gas in our tank. Year after year, we prove that we meet our goals. But we shouldn't have to struggle just to cover the basics.
We also here to support our teachers. We also here to support our teachers' aid, our bus drivers, the lunch ladies. So this is not only about your education and you, but this is overall what is best for Yonkers. We're going to fight for everybody, every nickel and penny we could get to help fund our schools.
And we're going to bring on Superintendent of the Department of Education in the third largest city in New York. And we're talking about Superintendent Aníbal Solar. I'm sorry, man, if I messed it up. I'm trying to get it. He's giving me thumbs up in the back. So, who stepped into the role May 2024 with more than 20 years of experience in education and leadership in urban school systems. He's married. He has children. Mr. Solar is committed to moving Yonkers public school system forward through academic progress, stronger community engagement. His appointment came with unanimous support from the Board of Education, reflecting confidence in his leadership and vision for the district. And we're going to welcome in right now Superintendent Solar. How are you doing, my brother? How things going?
I'm well, Mr. Jones. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. And don't worry about the name. As long as it's not derogatory, we are good, brother. We are all good, brother.
You know, I'm trying to. I want to get it right with all the guests. I try to get the names right. You know, out of respect. You know what I'm saying? And you're doing. And from what I hear, you know, Lorraine Lopez is a close friend of mine. That's my sister, man.
One of my trustees. Fantastic.
Yeah, she's a trustee too. Yeah, and I saw a couple of posts on Facebook, you know, about the rally, and you know, I'm a big supporter of education, you know. So what, you know, no matter what school district, I'm a big supporter of education, and I was impressed, man. I saw all the students up there, man. I saw everybody, and I hit Lorraine. I said, I need to interview somebody, man. I need to talk about this, right? You know, so because I've been writing a lot of articles on the future of education and where we need to go. So first thing, why did you think it was important to bring the students all the way up to Albany to show the elected officials how important education was?
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, what I would say is in Yonkers, this has been a structural challenge for Yonkers. There has been every year, there's typically a gap. Every year it gets compounded by the inability to fix the formula that funds Yonkers, the inability to change some of the variables that contribute to kind of our allocation and dollars around education. So, I think before my arrival, previous superintendents and previous community members have always gone up to kind of just advocate, because Yonkers is a really unique community. It's surrounded it's in one of the wealthiest counties in New York State, probably if not the country. When you think of the statistics that surround the property taxes here and some of the communities that are in Westchester County, but then you think Yonkers, you're thinking more of like a New York City type of community, and so we don't really fit well into this generalization of like what other communities look like in Westchester County. So, we think there's no better voice than our children and our parents, and our Yonkers Council Parent Teacher Association. They led this charge. They went out and got kids and families, asked us to partner with them, and again, our kids no better education than to go out and practice a democracy firsthand and give your voice and advocate. And I was really proud of our kids and really proud of the parents and the staff members that showed up. It's just because we want to be heard. We just want to be heard. We want to have some understanding as to why this continues to happen for Yonkers, and why are we always faced with making difficult decisions around programs, and making sure our kids have enough sports and art and music and all the things that in other communities are guaranteed. And so that was part of the reason.
Right. That's great. You know what? You mentioned something. The families came up too. How important is it to have the families involved in their kids' education with the school system?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I mean, I think you see a lot of it typically from grades pre-K to 6. You see really good family engagement. As the kids, as the babies get older, then they're like, "Mom, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good." You got all involved. And so I think sometimes we forget that we need you involved all the way through the entire continuum. We start to trust our kids and hey, all right, you got homework, I'm gonna trust you. But it's real important. I think at the end of the day, it's school, it's families coming together and wrapping around their own children, figuring out what's needed. And I'll be honest, we don't always get it right as a school system. So we need parents involved to either keep us in check and remind us like, look, you're missing this, you're missing that, or we could do better at this. At the end of the day, I'm always really of the mindset of this is customer service work. We are here to serve our families. We're here to work with them. But at the end of the day, they expect a certain level of product. They trust us with their most prized possession, and that's their kids. So it's real important. Family engagement is extremely important, and it's hard in a city like Yonkers because in some cases, not all of our families that go to certain schools live in the neighborhoods that those schools are located in. So sometimes family engagement is tough because public transportation isn't always as accessible in some of our neighborhoods as we would like it to be.
Right. What are some of the biggest challenges schools across the state, Yonkers and other schools, are facing today? What is your?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. One is enrollment. We are less people are having children, so we're losing children in terms of enrollment. So we've seen a decline in Yonkers over the last decade.
Right.
Decline of the number of kids in the district. We're about 24,000 right now. We'll probably go below that number heading into the following year, and that's the smallest.
Really?
Yeah. So we see a decline in enrollment, and again, just less people are having children. Not that and I think a lot of it has to do with the affordability of what it costs.
Yeah, a lot of people are moving. A lot of people. My next door neighbor up here, she just sold her house, and she's moving to Atlanta. A lot of people are moving out of the state of New York, and now that we're talking about it, like you see a lot of the school systems that they're having less children. And nobody is.
It's like no one wants to talk about, but we got to start having a conversation about it, and so that's one of the challenges I would say would be enrollment. I think the other challenge is that we're in the dawn of a new era here with technology and AI going so fast, and so how do schools adapt to preparing kids for a world and a workforce that I don't really know what's going to be required. And so we're all trying to figure out this AI world, and we're trying to figure out what skills are needed. And obviously literacy is still always going to be needed, the ability to read and write and to interpret information and to be able to try to figure out what's valid and what's not valid, and how do you question certain things. And so I think that's kind of be where we shift. New York State right now is going through a transformation with this portrait of a graduate, where they've developed what they believe graduates should be able to do. And so that's also a shift for us. We got to teach financial literacy is now required. Climate education.
Really?
Yeah. So those are down the pipe next year. Yeah. We're required in New York State to have kids exposed to financial literacy and climate education, which is obviously a hot topic.
And climate education.
Yeah. Given the snow we got in Yonkers this past year, you already know.
Exactly. Seriously, right? They're doing climate education.
Yeah. So we have to now educate kids on concepts of climate, global warming, the impact of the environment.
Really?
Solar, so that's one of the things that we're going to start having to start in the fall.
Wow, they're going to talk about how expensive our electric bills are these days, right? So
maybe they'll figure out how to get us off the grid so we can save a little bit.
Maybe the future will figure it out that we're not paying like $1,000 a month, man. So we start with our youth. That's that's great. We touched on AI, right? So how is the school system, your school system, or even coming from the state, dealing with kids that are using AI now? Because you ain't got to Google no more. You could go to Claude, ChatGPT, and say, "Hey, man, I want to know about the war in 1860, 66," and they'll just break it all down. And you. So how are the schools dealing with that?
Yeah, so I think we're still learning how to deal with it. We're not doing a really great job with it. I'll be honest with you. We typically, schools operate in a matter of like block it until we understand it, right? Like block it until we understand it, right? Like we don't know none of this, block it. And so I think part of that happens. I think for us, what we're trying to do is really educate ourselves around what the power is. It comes in Windows now. It's like Copilot. Like, what is Copilot? It's in the system. Who is this person?
Exactly.
So I think we're working on that. We're also working with Iona University. We have a cohort of administrators that are doing some AI micro-credentialing, trying to learn more how they do prompt engineering and how they use it. Good. We're trying to create conditions where we get our workforce more familiar with it. But even if you're not familiar with it, if you use Google, it is literally Gemini, right? Like you type in the search.
Exactly.
I think it's happening faster than we want. And I said that earlier, like at some point we're going to have to figure out the old assignments of writing a 5-paragraph essay are going to shift, right? Because no longer is that really a big skill. You can have AI do it. It's more around, can you present on the information? Let me hear you speak.
Right.
Your presentation skills. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to have to shift what we're asking kids to be able to do in class, and then also be able to do when they're on their own, knowing that AI is going to be one of their resources to use to do the project or to do the product. So
exactly. I think AI took us, we was warned, whether the people like Elon Musk or not, he did warn us. And then it was like the switch was turned on like overnight. Bro, it was crazy. I was like, oh my God, and it's here. It's here. And
we gotta embrace it. We gotta embrace it. We gotta be okay with it. We gotta, I think what we gotta learn to tell people is how do you try to tell if something's real or not, when it comes to images and video, and how do you go and do research to validate that there are sources that corroborate maybe what's written.
Exactly.
And that's, I think those are the skills we're gonna have to teach our kids, how to be more fluent in investigating resources and sources and being able to speak something's valid. Because the stuff you can find on the internet is, some of the stuff looks very real, and you're like, this happened, and then
even Google, like you could Google some stuff and you say, oh man, this is great. It looks like it's great information, and it's still crazy. So you damn if you do, you damn if you don't. Whether you go straight to AI or just the old style where we used to do just Google and like.
Well, back in the day, we would go into the encyclopedia, right? We just encyclopedia, right? And
man. It's just education is changing. And Man, we went through most of the questions I already had, bro. And
Okay.
I'm like, damn, we done shot through them all.
It's all good.
The trades. Now, I did an article that they're predicting like 800,000 jobs that they're going to need trades. And the guy from BlackRock was talking, and he was saying that, even with this AI revolution, then it's hard for them to find welders, plumbers, HVACs, all these jobs. And Black and brown students, especially male, right? I'm always a advocate. How do we get them into that on a high school level so they could come out? Because not everybody goes to college, right? I think it was a mistake on the Obama years to really push higher education, because you left a lot of the kids out that are not able to go to college, whether it's finance or their grades wasn't that good. And we didn't push trade for those students, and especially black men of color. If we're not going to get in the corporate world, we should have some type of trades. How do you feel about that? And from the Yonkers school district, how do you transition into that for some more trades for the kids?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good point. It's a tough conversation to have. What I would always say to you is, being Latino, being in the group of the Black and brown, what I always try to tell myself is that, I know that college isn't for everybody, but when other communities that are more wealthier say the trades is their route, then I will say then the trade should be everybody's route.
Exactly.
But the reality is making sure our kids, for me as a superintendent in Yonkers, we want our kids to have choices. We want them to have true choices. We want to create viable pathways in high school that are either career technical education pathways. We have one of the oldest career technical education schools in the state of New York, maybe even in the country, at Saunders High School. It's got a bunch of the skilled trades. It's a highly requested school. Everybody wants to get into Saunders.
Great.
Yeah, so they want the cosmetology, building, electrical engineer, HVAC, auto. We offer that. What I would also say I think is real important, and I think this is where the President Obama was going, and I really appreciate his work on this, because when he launched an initiative called My Brother's Keeper,
that was my next question. You just roll right in.
Maybe I can see your sheet. I think I can see your sheet. But when he launched that initiative, Yonkers and the mayor's panel and the superintendent at the time, they were one of the first districts to jump on board on that initiative.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, our boys and young men of color are graduating at a rate higher than any of our districts in the state of New York, but also nationally. And so that's why we're recognized. We're recognized as a model community. We are a community where they tell people, come check out what Yonkers does with boys and young men of color. And we've got great team members. We've got great individuals leading the work. We've got chapters in our schools. So we are trying to create those conditions where we tell our young men, we want you to have choices. We want you to have options. Look, you don't have to go to college. We want to always strive to go to college. And then if you don't go, that's fine. But if you decide to go, great, here's a pathway. If you don't, here's a legitimate career pathway. And, I think what we have to be careful of, and this is, again, a struggle in our community, it's like barbershop talk, right? Like, listen, I would love for you to be the barber, but more importantly, I would love for you to own the barbershop.
Exactly.
So how do we get our folks to understand that, like, having a degree opens those doors? Doesn't mean it's the only way, and there's always exceptions. But the reality and the research shows that if you get some form of credential, you're going to earn more money than somebody that just has.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you just said is important. Ownership. Like, I don't think we have that. We don't have that conversation enough in the Black community. Ownership, right? And owning businesses and owning institutions, because that's how, just being honest, that's how we can employ each other. So, and if we're not having those businesses, I've watched how I've been in corrections 33 years. I'm retired now. And I watched the difference, of a black and brown person going home and other going home, and they go home and their family have businesses and they work in their businesses.
Yeah.
You know, the young black and brown kid got to get out here and try to find a job. You know, so we have to really, and I thank you for saying that, you know, also putting it not just to work for somebody, but to own a business. I think that is very powerful.
You know this better because you're a perfect example of this with this Black Westchester magazine and the work that you do. This is ownership. This is what
exactly.
You create access. You create opportunity. You are allowed to be in certain spaces because you have, you know, created this entity. And had you not, what would be the voice of the Black and brown community in Westchester? I mean,
it wouldn't be one, bro.
Well, I would hope somebody would step up and definitely.
I've been waiting for somebody to take the keys. Nobody wants it.
Yeah, but what I would also say is that, you know, I think the other thing that we forget about in our communities is that we are very entrepreneurial. We're entrepreneurial people.
Yes.
You know, we are. It's inherent in our culture. We look to invent. We look to strive. We look to create. We look to collaborate. It's just who we are. You know, you go over Thanksgiving to somebody's house. You don't even got to be family, but you're family that day, and there's love. And so
exactly.
I think, you know, that's the important thing. And there are many people who have done this. You know, like look at Tyler Perry. He's created a whole industry for his group.
Exactly.
Even 50 Cent. 50 Cent
is
very
50's amazing, bro.
But he's very intentional about who's in and who's not.
Exactly.
And so I think there's something to be said for that. And to have more of our young men of color and more of our ladies of color to understand, look, it's great that you get a cosmetology degree and you get it from Saunders, but let's talk about owning your space and being able to rent chairs out to other people and what that does to your lifestyle, you know?
Is that no, and that's great because we have to have that conversation, man, because the next two, like I'm big, I told you I'm big on ownership, and I talked about how, you know, the Black community spends 2.6 trillion, they say, this year.
Wow.
You know, and we only have 2% of businesses. So our dollar is not turning around within our culture, you know, and if we don't really address that, you know, it's almost like we're almost failing our kids because they don't have where they're going to go. They're going to start, you know, they get mad at Trump saying, you know, black jobs, right? But technically, if we're not making the jobs for them, then other people are making black jobs, right? We should be making those jobs for our own people, you know, and it's not racism. It's just, you know, we need that economic stability, you know, to strive in America, you know, and I'm glad you're talking about it and you're trying to get these kids to understand it, you know, and not a lot of school systems talk about it. You know,
and it's tough. It's not an easy conversation to be had, but I just think that you know, my brother's keeper work, my sister's keeper work. There's some intentionality around there, and so that's what we're trying to do is be intentional. And this
keeper work is just important. Those examples, and they need, you know, to talk about, you know, issues and to combat.
And I would just go a step further. We need spaces for all of our kids, however they identify. If they identify in certain
absolutely,
we need to make that those spaces
absolutely. But they, you know, we need to have those conversations with our children. You know, I really do think that, and that's a good thing. Every school should have, you know, my brother's keeper. I know Mount Vernon.
There's a push across the state. To, you know, New York State's one of the only places that has dollars dedicated for. Okay, great. Because I know, you know, I see him here and there, you know. There's many chapters in New York. City has a bunch. We have a bunch. There's actually going to be an event, I believe, in April at the county center for MBK Westchester, like basically My Brother's Keeper Westchester, bringing folks. Great. Hudson. So
no, that's good. I mean, that's good. That's definitely good. We have to do that, man. We have to do that. Let me. I want to also like is New York responding to the needs of the Black and brown community as they should? Because many of us, Black and brown, we vote Democrat, right? It's a Democrat state. Are they being responsive, to, or is it politics as usual, and we still gotta just, push and push and push and push?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it depends, I guess, where you are, right? So I would say that, the answer to that question is relative to where you currently are, right? If you're struggling financially, you're going to say, the government is never here for me. The state is never here for me. If you are doing okay, you're going to say, yeah, I'm doing okay, but I could always be doing a little better. I think what we need maybe in not only New York, but I think nationally, that used to exist probably when, at least I know when my family was around, we really don't have a national voice like we used to for issues of communities of color. And, and again, everything gets kind of grouped and left and right and woke and not woke. And
exactly.
Versus just basic, affordability and access and opportunity and who's in these rooms and just always making sure we bring that lens, that there's an intentionality that the decision makers have some connection to not just some of the community, but all different types of the community. And, sometimes it is difficult. And so, I'm not really into politics and I don't do really well with politics. I'm just here. I'm just here for kids.
Right.
Exactly. I'm just here to do the work, but sometimes it is a challenge. And what I would say to you is, if you look at our urban cities, and there's a lot of evidence in those urban cities that those communities don't do well. You look at, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. Look at Albany. What I would say is in Yonkers, you fairly do okay, but it's a struggle. You got to work. You got to be working class. I view Yonkers as more working class community. Where they work, because it's hard to live here if you ain't working. You know what I mean? It's hard to afford it.
That's why I live in Orange County now. I got up out of Westchester, bro. I was looking at them house prices. I was like, oh no. Me and my wife is a detective in Mount Vernon, and and she owns the cupcake shop in Mount Vernon, Cupcake Cutie. So, but
that entrepreneur, see what I'm saying? Entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, man. We trying to, we trying to make it happen, man. We're trying to do it, and she retires this year. But it's it's rough. It's not easy, but it's work that fulfills the soul. My wife is in that cupcake. She works and then she goes into the shop and she's baking all day and baking all night. But it's a beautiful thing. Exactly. It's a beautiful thing, and she uses that to even help kids. So being in the community and doing things for the kids and so we're trying to, we're definitely trying to make it happen. We're trying to play our role, right? And hopefully everybody else play their role. But what is the best case outcome that you're hoping for, from the state right now, after the rally and having discussions, what is the best case scenario?
Yeah. So, what I love about Yonkers is that we have amazing advocates in Albany. We have the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who bleeds Yonkers. We have the mayor, obviously, who has been here for quite some time, knows these problems firsthand, is also Yonkers. Right. So, my only hope is that we continue to work together. Number one, they've done a lot of great things for this in terms of addressing our gap in the past, that we continue to work together to address that gap, and that we also look to, make some long-term fixes, because we just can't keep doing this every year, that we try to figure out a viable solution for us. So my hope is that we get some additional dollars to address our current gap. And I know that they're still negotiating and they're still doing that right now, and that we hopefully don't have such a negative impact on our budget this upcoming year. So, that's not so much the intent of the rally. The intent of the rally is to bring awareness, to make sure that we can advocate. But, we do have some great stewards in this area, Senator Shelley Mayer, Obviously, Stuart
Yep.
Cousins, we mentioned the mayor,
Mhm.
the assemblyman, Nader Sage, Gary Pretlow,
Yep.
all these people who know this community, know Yonkers. They've done great work in the past, and we want them to keep fighting for us, to keep doing good work for us. And, if all things go well, then this should happen. Hopefully, at least protect, and I've been saying this often, is, protect our progress, protect the investment, protect Yonkers Public Schools, whatever we can. Because for me, the hardest part of my job is that if I have to close a gap, what do I choose? Like, what do I choose? You want to protect the kids' experience as best as possible, but there's only so much you're going to be able to do that doesn't impact kids.
Right. Absolutely. If parents are watching, no matter what school district that they're in, what can parents do and the community to support the schools? I mean, this is just not for Yonkers, because I want, as a Yonkers superintendent, you're the first one ever came on Black Westchester. So,
You're gonna get me in trouble.
So all, if a parent is watching from a superintendent standpoint, no matter what school that they're in, what can the parents do in the community do to support the schools?
I mean, I just think staying engaged, man. The checking in on your kids. If it's an online portal, checking the grades. Attending certain events, being a part of the PTA is always a great way to stay connected. The research is pretty clear. And an involved parent means a better outcome student, and a student who does better. If you get a parent involved, you usually solve the problem, right? And that's really our approach, at least in Yonkers. So that would be my advice. Stay connected. You don't got to be in everything, but stay connected, stay close, have updated phone numbers and emails, and make sure you're asking engagement, and understand, and this is hard for our community because we always want to protect our babies, that, it's not adversarial. We got to work together. Together. So when there is an issue, think about how you come about and share that. But Brother Jones, I have to stop soon. So
we're coming to the end. That was like the final question. I want to thank you for coming, man. And hopefully down the line, man, you could come back on. You could tell me that Albany did you justice, brother, and Albany came through, and what your plans moving forward, man. I appreciate and thank you for coming on the show. And thank you again. Is there anything you want to say?
I was just thank you for having me. Hopefully now you've opened the door to having more superintendents in the Westchester area to join you. You got a great one in Mount Vernon. You got a good one in New Rochelle. All the superintendents in the area are fantastic. They love kids. They're committed to kids. So hopefully me being your first has now allowed you to go and reach out to others.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Have a blessed day, man. And we'll be talking. I'll be sending emails to your people, man. Thank you again. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Later. And that is it. Thank you, Superintendent Stolar, for coming on the show and discussing education in New York with the Publisher's Desk, powered by Black Westchester Magazine and blackwestchester.com. Please leave a comment, like, share, and as always, brothers and sisters, stay safe, stay blessed, and stay blacktastic. Peace out.
We appreciate you taking the time to engage with real conversations, real issues, and real perspectives that matter to Black America. Stay connected, stay informed, and as always, we'll see you next time at the Publisher's Desk. It's going to be Blacktastic. If you're serious about political clarity and independent thinking, this is for you. The Political Thought Bundle includes 3 full books, all personally singling. Democrats and Republicans, The Ultimate Gangbangers, breaks down how the two-party system operates like a legalized street war for power. Emotional Politics, Logical Failure exposes how emotion has replaced strategy in Black political engagement. Tolerance is for Coward lays out a blueprint for extended policing and community-led public safety rooted in outcomes rather than slogans. 3 signed books. One bundle, $60. That's a $75 value, and you're getting signed copies included. This isn't left versus right. It's results versus rhetoric. Go to twosteppublishing.com and secure your signed Political Thought Bundle today. It's going to be Blacktastic. For more than a century, Black America built its own economy under segregation, under discrimination, and under conditions most people today cannot imagine. We built businesses, we built banks, we bought land and property. In the Forgotten Blueprint, Damon K. Jones reveals how Black communities created thriving economic systems from 1800 to 1965, and why that blueprint still matters today. This book challenges the idea that our future depends on politics alone, and shows how ownership, family, and enterprise once powered Black prosperity. The blueprint is not lost. We just stopped using it. The Forgotten Blueprint, how Black America built its own economy from 1800 to 1965. On sale now at Two-Step Publishing and Amazon. Westchester Magazine has been giving our community a voice, reporting the stories others ignore, holding power accountable, and making sure the truth about our communities is told by us. But independent Black media only survives when the community supports it. If you believe in real journalism, community accountability, and keeping Black voices strong in local news, we need your help. Your donation helps us continue covering the stories that matter: politics, education, justice, and economic empowerment right here in Westchester. Support Black media, support Black truth, support Black Westchester Magazine. Donate today and help keep Black media alive. Because Black-owned independent media is Blacktastic. Black Westchester Magazine presents People Before Politics, the Sunday Rundown, every Sunday at 6 p.m. on YouTube. Join Damon K. Jones, A.J. Woodson, and Larnez Kinsey as they break down the biggest stories in politics, culture, and community from a Black point of view. No spin, no party loyalty, just logic, accountability, and outcomes. If it impacts Black America, we're talking about it. Tap in, subscribe, set your reminder. This Sunday at 6 p.m. is going to be Blacktastic.
This is the Publisher's Desk with Damon K. Jones, brought to you by Black Westchester Magazine, where life, culture, community, and faith meet truth, power, and purpose.